Welcome to the game overview for Apex Theropod Deckbuilding Game for 1 to 6 players. In Apex Theropod, you will take hold of a prehistoric predator where you will hunt, evolve, and dominate to compete for territory and resources. Let's talk about the components of the game. The main board is named the Hunting Grounds, where new huntable prey will appear, as well as environmental hazards to avoid and evolutionary traits to compete for. The game also comes with 6-player boards called the Nesting Grounds, where players will organize their cards. Ambush Point is where players set aside cards secretly for later use, which may increase their effects. There is also a space where players place their beginning deck, active cards, and discard pile. The Apex deck and the hatchery work together, where strong cards from your species deck may be bought using evolve points. Successfully hunted prey will be placed in the horde section of the Nesting Grounds, and once they are used for evolve points, placed in the den for later count as victory points. Let's talk about the Apex decks. The game comes with 7 Apex Theropods for players to choose from: Acrocanthosaurus, Utah Raptor, Spinosaurus, Giganotosaurus, Velociraptor, Tyrannosaurus, and Carnotaurus. Each deck is made up of a couple of types of cards, the first being the Alpha cards. The Alpha cards are represented by the Juvenile, the Adult, and the Veteran, which start in the hatchery but can be upgraded to the stronger version of the card throughout the game. The solo game does not use the Alpha cards. Each Apex deck also consists of a series of Hatchling Cards as well as a Juvenile card, which are low-level cards that players start the game with. For example, Hatchlings are worth 1 hunt point and Juveniles are worth 2. Each deck also consists of a variety of other Apex cards, which are placed in the Nesting Grounds in the beginning of the game. These cards can be bought throughout the game using evolve points. These Apex cards usually offer higher hunt points as well as other effects depending on how they are played. Next up, the Affliction Deck. The Affliction Deck is a deck placed on the main board of the game that is made up of a combination of 3 cards: Fresh Wound cards, Severe Trauma cards, and Virus cards. Each of these afflictions has a negative impact on the player deck throughout the game, so players will do their best to avoid them. Next up is the Alert Deck. Throughout the game, players can trigger negative effects in the game trail as well as the player's ambush point by drawing alert cards. There are also Defensive Stance and Disaster Area cards, which have a space on the main board as well. These 2 cards are usually negative effects. For example, the Disaster Area card is sometimes placed on certain footprints in the game trail, which limits the available huntable options. Defense Stance cards, on the other hand, are attached to cards in the game trail when their defense stance is activated. For example, this Iguanodon has a defensive stance attached to it due to an alert card. Since the defense stance is activated, whoever hunts this card will gain 1 affliction card. Next, we will look at the Environment Deck. The Environment Deck acts as a game timer, which features different environmental effects in each round. For example, this environmental card forces the players to discard an Apex card from their hand, as they have been blinded by a Dilophosaurus. The Theropods will also evolve throughout the game through the use of the Evolve Deck. Players will spend evolve points to obtain new evolve cards that are added to the player's deck. These cards have various effects. For example, Dynamic Vitality helps players eliminate afflictions. In the solitaire version of the game, players will play against a boss chosen by that player. In order to become the Apex Predator, the player must eliminate this boss. Bosses range from Tyrannotitan to Titanoboa. Each boss is accompanied by a series of minions that will make your goal of achieving Apex even more difficult. Let's talk about the Hunt Deck. The Hunt Deck will be made up of a series of cards that your chosen predator will hunt to gain points. These footprints on the game board will be filled with huntable prey, and if you're playing solo, it is where the boss and its minions will show up as well. The Hunt Deck is made up of a conglomeration of creatures. Prey, big game, predators, titans, and menaces will make up the Hunt Deck in a multiplayer game, and a boss and its minions will be added in for a solo game. So, to sum it all up, players will choose a predator and start with a deck of cards to hunt the game with. Players will gain points and use the carcasses in their horde to pay for Apex card from their Apex deck, and also use evolve points to buy evolve cards, all while trying to avoid certain afflictions and become the Apex Predator. And that is it for the game overview. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. If not, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.